Hi, I'm Mark Daniel Nelson here with my good friend Ira Becker and Bob Clearmountain. Today we have a really exciting episode and release of a new plugin by Apogee called Clearmountain's 8068. Based on the 8068 Neve behind me, this was the console that started it off for you.
We built a studio called Power Station in New York in 1977, and this was the first console there in Studio A. We spent quite some time looking for the building in New York, went through a lot of different places, me and Tony Bon Jovi, and yes, that's right, John Bon Jovi's cousin, came across this incredible building, which I ended up locking myself into when I went to go visit it. And that was it. It used to be a TV studio where they used to shoot a show called Let's Make a Deal, if anybody remembers that, any old timers. That was the first console. I always liked it because it's really easy to operate, sounds really good. So many great records were made on it, including Scary Monsters or David Bowie, all the Chic and Sister Sledge records, like We Are Family, Le Freak, and Good Times. One of the first Bryan Adams records that I did with Bryan called You Want It, You Got It, and Cuts Like a Knife. I think we did mostly on that. The River for Springsteen was recorded on that. A lot of punk rock records like Talking Heads, Ramones. Tony and I produced some bands called The Tough Darts and Johnny Stantz Band. And the list goes on and on.
Walter, you're stuck.
Here. Let go.
Well,
she's a camera house.
A lot of people know that the Neve sound is a big kind of beautiful, ploppy, fat tone. And a lot of the records you just mentioned, to me, have that kind of personality. 8068 is my favorite console of all time. And a lot of that has to do with how simple the EQ section is.
Yeah.
Really, it's just
grab it.
Turn it up and you don't really have to think about it too much.
Yeah.
What I found with the plugin, dealing with kind of developing plugins on my end, that sometimes there's this like aliasing thing in plugins that just really gets really annoying. It's a high frequency thing that's kind of abrasive. I'm not hearing with this guy. Right. Ira, who's been Bob's guy forever, but also was a big part of developing this plugin. Did you feel like you hit any sort of walls when you were kind of doing the A and Bs on this?
I mean, a little bit with A and B, but more about like measurements, right? And trying to match, because we measured each frequency and boosted and cut, and try to match it with the plugin with a AP measurement device, and we were comparing it. And it took a while to get the curves right and and how they interact with each other. If you boost here and you cut there. So that took the longest time.
I mean, the hardest thing in digital is to try to mimic the beauty of analog, and in code, it just doesn't, right. It's not easy to do that. Right. Did you find that there was a point where it just clicked and it was just it matched to the point where you were going between the two and you're like, that's it?
Yeah. So after we got the frequency response right, then we turned into the harmonics and the distortion element, and that took another couple months trying to match it. And then once we got that part right, then we're comparing the whole thing. It's like, oh, this is.
There's a point where it can get to be like a devil's triangle.
Yeah.
Where you get the distortion right, but then the top end loses some sort of response that's not the same, and it's very technical, but important to know. I mean, the history of it is insane. There's a reason we were talking earlier about a Neve console is not writing the hit song, but I do feel like personality-wise, the sonic character is huge. I think the biggest thing is the fact that you've been able to find this again. You got this 20 years ago?
Yeah. It's 2006.
Maybe tell the story about the bidding war that happened.
Yeah, well, I wanted one like it, and my wife Betty also knew that's what I wanted. I know she just knows these things. I don't even remember talking to her about it. I'm mixing on an analog desk, so there's always that hour or so when the assistant's setting up the next song, and I'm just sitting on the couch in the back, looking at my computer and answering emails or whatever. And I thought, well, let me just have a look. I wonder if there's one available at Neve 8068, because a lot of them have been chopped up and the modules have been taken out. Nobody wants to spend as much money as it costs to buy one of these things. And so, they'll put the EQ module in a rack, and it's got the preamp in there and everything. And so
It's such a shame though, because
it makes
the
sense.
idea that you were able to get this, because I bet you now this would have been parted out, but the fact that you got it 20 years ago,
that's right.
before everyone started.
Yeah, and I thought, God, there's actually, I wonder if there's any intact. And sure enough, this one came up, and it was a guy named Steve Ripley had it in Oklahoma. There's a guy named Fred Hill, a technician, that came in and recapped it and did all the things, brought it up to spec, and they put the flying faders automation in there and everything. I thought, well, geez, and it was marketed as this was the first console from Studio A at Power Station.
Wow.
I went, well, that's exactly the one. I mean, I wanted one like it. So, but that's precisely it. And so, a couple of days later, I said to my wife, I said, look, this, I found this 8068 online, and I'm really thinking about buying. She goes, you're fucking kidding me. Lucas, her analog engineer, who also loved to search for stuff on the internet, he found the same one. And so it turns out we were kind of bidding against each other for a couple of days.
What was the first project or song or album that you worked on this at Power Station?
Sure, yeah, it was Chic. In fact, it was before there wasn't even a glass in the window in Studio A. It was a piece of plywood. And there was an ISO booth off
That's
to
another one of these things where people are going to start putting plywood in your
right. I remember the next thing, there was a guy named Miko, who was Tony Bon Jovi's production partner, and they did Disco Star Wars together, and they did really well off of Disco Star Wars before that. And so now they were doing Disco
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters?
Disco Close Encounters.
Disco Close Encounters.
Well, you could
So that
find
was
those on vinyl. Yeah.
that was the next session, and I remember they had just taken the plywood out that morning, and there was a rhythm section. It was a New York rhythm section. All the top guys, were in there, and they were warming up. But Eddie Evans, the chief engineer, said, Bob, make sure, pointing at the talkback buttons, that it wasn't really wired properly yet. So make sure you push the button down and not up, because if you push it up, it's going to feed back, and it's going to be really excruciating in the headphones. And so, like an idiot, I told Tony this when he came in. I said, look, make sure you don't push the button up. And of course, they're all out there with the headphones on. And, oh, you mean this one? And then he points at me, right?
So everyone looks in the window.
Yeah. Yeah, he's Clearmountain, what'd you do?
What was the console at Media Sound before?
Well, they had these little homemade Spectrasonics things that were
Jumping from that
awful.
to
Well, then they got the first run of the 80 series,
Right.
of the 8068s, actually.
there
They
were
were
a handful
they were
of that.
custom ones.
There was another 68 at Hit Factory we were talking earlier about. I mean, it was
Yeah,
definitely a New York sound.
yeah. Well, that was the thing. They had
Bottom.
that, and we loved it at Media Sound, and so we had two of them. We had this one, and there was one in Studio B.
I mean, going back into the plugin universe, obviously the EQ is essential. It is a great sounding EQ. It's really easy to use.
Yeah.
But the character of the preamp, you guys also model too, right?
Right.
Yeah. And a lot of the sound of a Neve when you're starting to push it a little bit is that nice grindy
Yeah.
sound that you really got it. I was really cool.
It's just warm too. It's just a nice sort of warm coat on a
Right.
winter's day, sort of. I think
Best it can.
that's pathetic. I can't believe I said that.
Amazing. It's like a hug.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think people that kind of talk about the sonic characteristic of gear, Neve has always been known for having that really big kind of puffy.
Yeah.
It's like a puffy jacket.
Yeah. It's just a warm sound. You brighten it up, and it doesn't really get harsh. It's just beautiful.
So what's
And the plug-in really, really nailed it. I was amazed.
Yeah.
Because we compared them. We went through just about every frequency, and wow, I can't tell the difference. I really couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
you feel like there's going to be a series of things coming out with Apogee, Clearmountain's 33609, or are we going to just stick around on the one channel?
We'll see.
We'll see.
We got that giant SSL sitting there.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll get that one too.
Well, it's been a lot of cool chat about this. My favorite console ever. I think it's coming out today when this video comes out, which would be a Tuesday. So make sure you go head over to Apogee's website and demo the plugin. It sounds really great. And you guys did a lot of hard work to get it to where it's at. I'm excited to see the compressor next. That's what I'm poking at they do next.
Yeah, I want to do 1178 actually, and check out the rest of the plugins because Apogee's not really known for plugins because there's just we don't make hundreds of them, but they make
We'll talk about
really good ones.
a couple of the ones you use every day.
Well, there's the
This one you use.
yeah, it's just some convolution reverbs which are nice that we made ourselves. Of course, the domain has those reverbs and a bunch more, and a bunch of delays and harmonizers and EQs and got all this mishmash of stuff. But then the other stuff, the Pultec, Apogee's the only plugin manufacturer that's licensed to use the term Pultec, the name Pultec. And there's a reason for it because they did it with Steve Jackson, consulting with Steve Jackson and myself, of course. They're really better than all the others, and really, really top of the line. And the LA3A sort of knockoff. Opto 3A, I use all the time actually for backing vocals and things like that. And then there's a mod comp. The mod comp is it's almost an education in compression because there's these little faders and as you push the fader, it shows you right above it exactly what it's doing graphically.
So make sure you guys go and check out.
Yeah, they're all
the sound
really good.
See what's going on at Apogee too, because I know there's a lot of new development and stuff with some of the interfaces. Any last stories you can remember about this amazing console? Something that sticks out, maybe some of the Bruce Springsteen stuff?
Yeah, but the stuff we can talk about, unfortunately. Meant a lot. Those early days were, that was a trip. It really was fun with Bruce and all the people we'd see come in there, like Bob Ezrin, I'd see there sometimes. He produced a couple things in that room. Mike Chapman, who did Blondie. And
I hate to use the word golden era, but it really was.
It was. They were amazing.
It was such an incredible.
There's incredible stuff going on. There was always somebody in that building, besides Roxy Music and, Bryan Adams, Springsteen, and
Bowie stuff.
Bowie, that's right. Bowie did cut Ashes to Ashes on that desk.
Well, thank you guys for your time. And don't forget to check out the new Clearmountain's 8068.